I just wanted to make sure you were on the line, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about managing the public comment during the public hearing. Well, I have more than one, but what is your question for me? And then I'll tell you all of what I'm thinking. Okay. That was one of my main ones. So first of all, are you going to be able to tell us how many people are in the queue at the beginning of the hearing? You can see the number. Okay. Secondly, I am going to observe a strict time limit. Whatever I impose, it may be shorter than 3 minutes. It may be 2, depending on how many public comment people we have to make verbal comment. So I may decrease it to 2 minutes, and then I'm going to instruct you. Can you keep the time and cut them off? I would like you to actually cut them off, and I'm going to warn them all that at 2 minutes, their microphone is basically going to be muted or they're going to be cut off. Very tightly is the answer. Yeah, I mean, we're going to hear them stop talking, right? Because you will have muted them at 2 minutes. Okay, so when that happens, I will move us on to the next caller. I mean, I'll prompt the conversation, but I don't want to have to try to stop them, then get them stopped, then get them off, then get the next, that's just not going to work. So, but the other thing is they're going to get a bit of some process, in addition to that kind of process stuff, they're going to get some other information from me at the beginning of the hearing too. So make sure you're listening to that. I'm sure you would be, but just make sure you're listening to that so you can help enforce that as well. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And are we ready to go? Councilor.
Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Yeah, I saw a message a moment ago that she was joining the executive session. So
I texted her and let her know that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Guess we'll wait a moment. Elise, it's good to see you in person-ish. I guess this is in-person life in COVID times.
Mr. Nolip, it sounds like Jeanette's having some issues getting into this meeting. Councilor Shaw, sorry. I'll let her know.
Oh, there she is. Okay, Mr. Nolip, are we ready to go? All right, I will call this Tigard City Council meeting to order. City Recorder Krager, please call roll.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Here.
Councilor Newton. Here. Council President Liu.
Here.
Councilor Shaw. Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Youth Councilor Nog.
Here.
All right. Thank you. And we'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Nolet, please put the flag up on the screen. I'll ask everyone to mute themselves and participate on their own. All right, thank you. Councilor staff, any non-agenda items? I'm not aware of any.
None for us, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We have no proclamations or recognitions. We'll move on to public comment. This is time to call in if you'd like to make verbal public comment. Number to call is 503-966-4101, and those with general comments should call in now to get in the queue. If you wish to give testimony on agenda item number 6, which is the quasi-judicial public hearing on the Cedar Brook annexation and site development review, you should wait until that item is announced to call in. So this is for general public comment. Now's the time to call. And we do not have any follow-up to previous public comment. Is that correct, City Manager Reimer?
Correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. And now we get to go to Tigard High School student envoy, Elise Butera.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for the music in the background. I'm at my workplace right now, Beachhead Deli. Just letting you guys know a little bit about Tigard High School right now. We just had our prom April 30th, which was a huge success. That was put on by our junior class in leadership. It's our junior class fundraiser. And it was the first really big school dance that we've had since COVID, which was just super exciting. It was junior, seniors only, and we had it at the Melody Ballroom Center. Very successful, as I said. We had a lot of people very excited about that. Right now is also our election season in leadership. So our new ASB president has been elected. Her name is Kayla Cum, and hopefully I will be bringing her to meet you guys or sending her information your way. She's a very capable person. She's going to be head of NHS as well, which is a National Honor Society at our school. And her vice president is Bella Jett, and I feel like she's going to be a lot more involved with city council as well. So look forward to meeting those two very capable young women very soon. I'm very excited that they were both elected. Next coming up, we're going to have our other ASB elections, which is for our chairs like ASB Spirit, ASB Activities, ASB Communications, ASB Random Acts of Kindness, Community Service, and Human Rights. Those are all going to be coming up these next few weeks. And then after that, we go to our class officers. And this year, it seems like a lot more people are going to be running for leadership, which is very exciting. Obviously, competition can be hard, but it's good to know that our student body is getting more excited about leadership. We have a spike ball tournament that is coming up this weekend that Beachhead's actually going to be sponsoring. We're getting a few sponsorships from businesses in our community, kind of working as a leadership program to reach out to small businesses so that they can help work with Tigard High School and build relationships that way. We also will be having Tie Fest coming up. I do not have the date for that, but it's going to be kind of a Tigard festival where we're going to have small businesses within our school run by students, like earring making companies, small artists at our schools, and we're going to have food vendors as well. And that's just going to be a fun little festival, kind of think of balloon festival, that our activities program will be putting on. And yeah, also kind of to give a plug for my choir, Sim Choir as well. Tigard Correlation came in 3rd at state, which is very exciting, and our concert choir came in 13th place at state. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on at Tigard High School right now.
Well, thank you very much, Elise. We appreciate it. And thanks for serving the council so well with updates over the last year. We really appreciate it, and look forward to meeting the new students that'll be keeping us updated and informed. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We are going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an update from the police department. Chief Mcalpine, are you ready?
Oh, I think I am. But what Elise just reported out reminded me of something that I can share. So again, for everybody, good evening. Chief Kathy Mcalpine here for the April dashboard. what I'm adding that at least prompted me was that in a recent conference that our Washington County Crisis Negotiation Unit attended, our team placed first in practical exercise. And as you know, we do have one member on the CNU team who was actually in the role of coach or second chair during this exercise. So I believe Washington County has posted that out, but again, just for your attention, that's a pretty big accomplishment. Unfortunately, the common theme seems to be a sea of red when we look at our dots, right? Especially when we're talking about the crime. And I don't say that lightly, but it does illustrate for those listening. Thank you, Mike. So again, this is only the first 4 months of this year. We are up 33.5% in persons crimes. And that doesn't even take into account our double homicide that we just experienced, which will be in the month of May. To that incident, I cannot speak to it because it is a very much an active investigation with all hands on deck and many agencies helping us to hopefully bring people to be held accountable in that respect. So look forward to being able to tell you more about that case as it evolves. Property crime is up 68%, and concerning is shoplift, at least the known losses so far this year is up to $375,000. So to those businesses who are losing, valuable income, that's a big hit. Societal crimes are up 18%, and our calls for service are up 11.7%, or almost 800 more calls for service than we did last year with virtually the same amount of staffing that we have. So I'll go right into staffing. We still have 2 people on extended light duty, but thankfully they are taking phone reports, and that does take a bit of a load off of our officers who are working the streets. We still have 1 on extended military deployment, but we were thankful to get Officer Dower back from his 1-year military deployment. So we only have 1 right now. We have 2 in the pre-academy and what we call now phase 0, while they wait to get in. We have 1 in the academy and 1 that's just recently graduated and is in the training program. I've given 2 offers, and they hire. 1 starts in June and 1 starts in August, and we hope to get them both in the academy by August. We've had, as you recall, with the levy, and thank you, we were able to do advanced crisis intervention and de-escalation training. We had 3 officers attend in April for the 40 hours. So this is the first group finally coming out of the pandemic. And as you know, this type of training requires a lot of scenarios and hands-on. So they had to wait till it was safe so they could meet in person. So 3 people went through that training. Our shift coverage overall, we average about 41%. We're at minimum staffing, or we're on overtime to meet the minimums. And swing shift is still our largest hit with about 63% on their minimums. Some other things of note is, as you recall, you've all seen the news releases. We did have a sex abuse investigation arrest and a commercial burglary arrest. And that commercial burglary, as we talk about property crimes, this was occurring both at the Pearson Pagodas, both in Washington County, Clackamas County, and now we've been able to make an arrest and hold that individual accountable. Good news, we've done a conditional offer on a community engagement coordinator, and we probably can't get that person soon enough to help us talk about crime prevention to our community. She is very enthusiastic, but will need to be trained on crime prevention. But we look forward to hopefully onboarding her within a month and a half. Also of note, for the month of April, officers responded to 2 males that pulled out a gun, flashing gang signs to each other at the Washington Square Mall. You can imagine this was the mall was fairly crowded, and so that caused a melee. When we responded, everybody was fleeing, to include our 2 suspects. We did find 2 guns. 1 was stolen, and we were able to identify both subjects and, of course, both convicted felons from Portland. And you'll probably continue to hear that theme of the Portland connection. The other 2 calls of note when we're talking about liability and concerns is we've had 2 calls that we responded to Both were property calls in nature. One was just a parking violation that we approached the occupant of a vehicle and he rammed our patrol car and fled at a high rate of speed. The other incident was we contacted suspected shoplifters, had several cars, what we thought was a pretty good positioning, and started to approach on foot, and these individuals rammed the patrol car multiple times to flee at a high rate of speed. So again, we've been able to identify at least one of those individuals as somebody from Portland. So I guess my plea to all of you is when you have conversations at your various roles on whatever we can give our support to Portland to address our issues, I think we can definitely, without a doubt, see a correlation, and it's impacting our community in a significant manner. And I know that DA Barton has also been highlighting those concerns as well. So anything in the future I can provide you with further information, I would be happy to do that. And that is a very quick, down and dirty report for the month of April.
Thank you, Chief Mcalpine. Any questions or comments? Councillor Newton and then Councillor Goodhouse.
Yeah, thank you, Chief, for that thorough report. Two questions, comments that aren't really related. I know in the past when we've had property crimes of a certain type or trend, our commercial crimes unit has done a good job of trying to target, education or do something to sort of help business owners be able to help avert those kinds of crimes. And that's my first question is, are they able to pivot and help the business communities maybe try to prevent some of that? And second, I'd be interested in knowing what the feedback was from the 3 officers that went to the extended training, since I talked to a lot of people about it when I was making calls on the levy and how important that was. So I'd be interested in feedback. Thanks.
Yeah, to your first question, yes, they still do. And as recent as probably now a month and a half ago, if you recall, we were getting the burglary, residential burglary, garage burglaries in Summerfield. And so CCU met with the Homeowners Association and group and talked about things that they could do to target harden their infrastructure. And of course, they go out to various businesses. And for those listening, again, it doesn't have to be your major box stores. This can be your small local business, and they'll be happy to provide very specific. I do know that they presented last Wednesday at the Community Academy, as I know Councillor Goodhouse and Councillor Shaw can attest to this. And not only did they talk about a couple of cases, but they also talked a little bit more in detail about fraud, identity theft, skimming, and gave suggestions to our attendees on some things that they could do, and created a high level of awareness. Those are things I hope to put out there with our community engagement person as well. So thank you for the question. And I will get back to you. I will get some quotes and from the officers that attended it.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Thank you, Chief. And even though it happened in May, is there any updates on the with MSD Suites? I think they're at the mall, the shootings that happened there. I know that it was released and there was some updates, but I don't know if there's anything further. I know some public members have asked me kind of what's going on with that, so I don't know if there's any further updates or if you want to just kind of give a recap of what's already been released.
Yeah, it's not as much as I'm sure everybody would like to have because it's just so much an ongoing investigation. I will say again, all of our resources and our surrounding partners have been there every step of the way. We're talking about a lot of evidence to process, a lot of videos, things of that nature. As you can imagine, everybody fled, and so trying to contact people. So it's been a heavy lift and some long hours for our investigators. What I think I can say is that it was a spur of the moment booking when they were turned away in Portland and happened to land in Tigard and was granted a room and for a birthday party that just went south. And that's probably about as comfortable as I feel, other than what was initially released, which again indicated that all parties that are known to be involved were all associated with Portland. not any of our local folks that were renting that room.
All right. Any other
Thank you.
questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the updates. I know our community does as well. And we'll move on to report out from the Tigard Area Chamber of Commerce. Jessica Love, are you with us?
I am. Good evening, Council. Nice to see you all again. Our Leadership Tigard class met today and they learned about communications and media. Kelsey Anderson with the Tigard Police Department was one of our presenters and was also one of our coordinators. Also Nicholas DeSalvo with Edge One Media. They got to get a tour of the Tualatin Valley Community TV station. They got to learn about public speaking and how to negotiate, and a lot of great content for them to learn. I would like you to save the date for our Leadership Tigard graduation, which is going to be Tuesday, June 21st at the Broadway Rose Theater. We'd love for you all to attend. The Tigard Chamber of Commerce is hosting Debbie Mullahan's retirement party. It is tomorrow night, May 11th at 5:30 till 7:30. There'll be tacos and good times. And so we invite you all to join us. It is going to be at Symposium Coffee / Tigard Chamber of Commerce building. And then Tigard Restaurant Month is coming up in June. Restaurants can register. The last day is coming up next week. And so we encourage any restaurant within the Tigard area, which is 97223 or 97224, to register to participate. We're excited to bring this program back to the Tigard community. And then we'd like you to save the date for another wonderful ribbon cutting ceremony on June 9th at 7:30 a.m. with Good Morning Tigard. Jazzercise Beaverton is relocating to Tigard and will be Jazzercise Tigard Beaverton at the Sean Gardner Studio in downtown Tigard. So we're super excited. We've had a lot of great ribbon cuttings in the downtown area and just throughout the Tigard community. So we're excited to see those continue on. And then our candidate endorsement committee is currently working through their process of figuring out how they're going to manage and what they're going to accept an endorsement requests for the November elections. And they plan to announce within the next 2 to 3 weeks or so. So we encourage anybody that's looking from a city all the way up to a state level that is looking at possibly running for a position in any of the roles that are going to be up for November to be a lookout onto our social media channels and our website. And then we want to thank everyone for coming to the Tigard Shining Stars Community Awards Gala. It was so amazing to be back in person again for that event. And if anybody wants to rewatch the awards ceremony, they can on our social media and our YouTube channel, so Facebook and YouTube. And then Tigard Tualatin Night at the Hillsborough House is coming up on May 25th. The Tigard Chamber of Commerce has partnered to get a block of seats. So we invite you all to come and join us for a fun night at the ballpark and cheer on Mayor Snyder as he throws out the first pitch for that night. And then we have our Tigard Chamber annual meeting that's going to be June 30th in lieu of Good Morning Tigard. And that is going to be at 7:30 at the Broadway Rose. It's a great opportunity to come take a look at what the chamber has accomplished over the last year, and then also take a look at what's going forward. And this is specifically important since we have a new CEO, we have a new growth manager, and so we invite you all to join us. The Tigard Farmers Market had an amazing opening day on May 1st. And so we're excited to be able to continue to support the community with the market. We want to remind the community that the Market Sprouts Kids Club, our community booth, and our music booth is all back at the market this season. And we are doing our snap matching program. For downtown Tigard, Nerds to Go officially has opened in downtown Tigard. And then we have the Tigard Art Walk that's starting this coming Sunday, May 15th, and it will go through May 22nd. And so it's starting off with a brush off event that will be taking place in partnership with the Tigard Farmers Market this coming Sunday. And then we have our traditional events of like Meet the Artist, Artist in Action, and also the pop-up art gallery. So I encourage everyone to check out Explore Downtown Tigard for more information. And then new this year is the Tigard Wine Walk, and that is a ticketed event where you have to purchase in advance. And we have 11 wineries that will be at 11 participating businesses throughout the downtown area giving away samples. It's $25 to get a ticket, and that gets you samplings at all of these 11 wineries. So We encourage you to get your ticket before they sell out. And then last but not least, just a reminder that the Tiger business community in the downtown area is open with the construction. So please come out and support these businesses. We want them to continue to succeed, even with their doorways blocked slightly with tubing and all sorts of stuff. So make sure to come on down to downtown Tigard and support our local businesses. Any questions? I know that was a lot, just throwing.
Yeah, Jessica, thank you for covering all that. We've got lots of calendar items to put on our calendars and for the community to know about. So that's wonderful. And thank you.
Yes.
All right. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right. We're going to move on to written public comment. City Recorder Krager, I don't believe we received any written public comment that was not related to the quasi judicial public hearing that will be heard later. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We received a lot of comment for the quasi judicial public hearing and no general comments.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to public comment, phone and public comment that is not related to the public hearing. Mr. Nollup, are there any callers in the queue for that item?
Mr. Mayor, no callers in the queue for the general comments.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Consent agenda items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and then separate action. And tonight we have one item on the consent agenda, which is a public library network services and funding intergovernmental agreement. Is there a motion? Council President Lube.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Councilor Shaw. It looks like you're trying to second. I think we got to get it on the tape, unfortunately.
Second. I'd like
Okay.
to second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Councillor Goodhouse,
Yes.
Councillor Newton,
Yes.
Council President Lube,
Yes.
Councillor Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right, the consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilor
I-
Goodhouse, did you have something?
Yeah, I don't know if other people are having this. It seems like when some people are talking, I don't know if something's wrong with Teams in general, but it seems to be distorted when some people are talking, or I don't know if there's a technology problem going on, but it seems like just when some people are talking, it's cutting out and doesn't seem to just be one person. So I don't know if other people are seeing that, or if Mike sees maybe what's going on, or something's going on with this session or something.
I only saw that with Chief Mcalpine, which is kind of consistent with her connection usually for evenings, at least my experience. Mr. Nollup, are you seeing connection issues with anybody else or audio cutout?
No, Mr. Mayor, I can't. Everything's coming through on this end just fine, and except for, like you said, the consistent Chief Mcalpine's kind of cuts in and out a little bit.
Okay, maybe it was just a couple. It was something like with Carol and someone else, but it's fine. I just wanted to see.
Okay. We're going to move on to the main event this evening, the quasi-judicial public hearing to consider approval of the Cedar Brook annexation and site development review ZCA 2021-00001 and SDR 2021-00001. I'm going to open the public hearing, and then City Attorney Rahala, I am going to have you start by giving the quasi-judicial hearing procedures, and then I'm going to add some additional instructions to the process to clarify how we're going to conduct this evening. So, City Attorney Rahala, will you start with the official procedures?
All right, certainly. This is a quasi-judicial land use proceeding. Council's decision must be based on the following substantive criteria. Tigard Community Development Code chapters 18.120, 18.210, 18.230, 18.410, 18.420, 18.670, 18.710, 18.720, 18.780, 18.910, 18.920, and 18.930. Tigard Comprehensive Plan Goals 1, 11, 12, and 14. Metro Code Chapter 3.09 and ORS Chapter 222. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the applicable relevant approval criteria described in the staff report or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation that apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue clearly enough so that council understands and can address the issue precludes an appeal to LUBA on that issue. Failure of the applicant to object to a condition of approval may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Members of the city council will be asked whether they have any conflicts of interest. If a council member has an actual conflict, the council member cannot participate. Council members must declare any contacts about this case with a member of the public. Council members must also declare if they have independent knowledge of relevant facts, such as from a visit to the site in question. A council member who describes ex parte contacts or independent information shall state whether the contact has impaired his or her impartiality or ability of the member to vote on this matter. After the discussion of conflicts and ex parte contacts, any person may challenge the participation of a council member or rebut any statements made. The council member in question may respond to such a challenge. Thank you.
Can't hear you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Nolip, before we get rolling here, I want to just set a couple of additional pieces of information for the public that is planning to give testimony. So can all the people that are on the line to give testimony hear me now, Mr. Nolip? How many total people do we have right now? 5. All right. Maybe we'll come back to that then, because I want them to be able to hear it. So once you've got everybody on the line, maybe we'll come back to that. But before we go to the staff report. So, all right, I'm going to check with counselors and see if anyone has either a conflict of interest or had any ex parte contact. I think probably everyone on the council has driven by the site. Just by living in Tigard, it'd be hard not to. So I think that goes kind of without saying, but does anyone have anything beyond that that they need to declare either as a conflict of interest or ex parte contact? All right. Let's see. We do not need to. City Attorney Rahala, when are you wanting us to check with the public on whether any of them have a challenge to our participation? Later?
Yes, so if that could be the first part of any public comment.
Okay.
It's a little bit harder to do it virtually than in person, but yeah, that would be, if any member has a challenge, they would say that before giving the rest of their public comment.
All right. And Mr. Nolip, have the callers that were being screened gotten through screening, and are they now able to hear?
Some of them, they keep trickling in, so they automatically get filtered into the screeners as they come in, and a screener becomes available. So right now, 2 of them would not be able to hear your instructions.
All right. I guess we'll move on to the staff report. Associate Planner Lindor, staff report, please.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Agnes Lindor, Associate Planner, and the item before you tonight is the Cedar Brook Annexation and Site Development Review Proposal. Just 1 second, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, great. Is that all? Can you see that? Is that visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the site information, here is the location of the development site. It is just south of Hall Boulevard and east of 92nd Avenue, where Montage Lane terminates. The site is approximately 2.5 acres. It's 2.9, including the right-of-way that is part of the annexation. The current zoning in Washington County is transit-oriented, R18 through R25. And then upon annexation, it will be mixed-use residential 1. The site is bordered by single detached houses to the south and to the east, and a townhouse development to the west. So as I mentioned, the proposal before you tonight is 2 applications. The first one an annexation and the second one a site development review for an assisted living facility. So this is the proposed site plan. As you can see, Montage Lane continues onto the site and then terminates with a public cul-de-sac. There is a driveway that goes along the south property line and then all the way up to Hall. There's also a driveway that goes into the parking garage right here. And all of this is basically the building with ground garage floor parking. And then there's also a loading area on 92nd Avenue. So when this initially went to the Planning Commission back in January 10th, the staff recommendation was denial. So I wanted to go through what changed with the site plan that basically made this project approvable and meeting city approval criteria and standards. So the first one was this public cul-de-sac on Montage Lane. Previously, what was proposed was a private hammerhead turnaround. And then this next area here was the drop-off area or loading and unloading area of passengers. The building was not set back enough from the street to where the screening that's required for loading areas was located in the right-of-way, which is not allowed. It needs to be provided on public property or private property. So this portion of the building was moved further back from the street in order to accommodate the loading area and the screening. For number 3 here, when this was a private turnaround, this side of the building was exceeding the maximum street side setback of 20 feet. Given that this is a public roundabout, or sorry, not roundabout, cul-de-sac, it meets the required maximum setback. The number 5 is a multi-use path that's being proposed because there is no public street connection through the site out to Hall. There is a PED connection that is required, and this will have a public access easement over it, and it would be accessible to the public. And then lastly, this number 6 was the vision clearance area was not being met on Southwest Hall Boulevard from that driveway, and that has been addressed now to meet the requirements. So since the Planning Commission recommendation was issued, There were several public comments that had come in between that time and today's hearing, and so you should have all of those. Those have all been forwarded on to you. I did also want to mention for the record that in addition to the public comments, there were also 2 phone calls that were received during that time from Mr. Jim Long and Gretchen Biener. One last thing I did want to point out was through final review of the Planning Commission recommendation, there was a tree establishment bond condition that's included in the findings on page 42 of the report. It's kind of towards the top, but it was never added to the conditions of approval. So staff would recommend that that City Council make sure that condition gets added as part of the approval or decision.
Agnes, can you state that one more time so we can catch that? What is the specific condition?
Sure, it's the tree establishment bond condition.
Thank you.
Sure. So with that, staff finds that the annexation meets all the applicable approval criteria in the Tigard Development Code, the Tigard Comprehensive Plan, Metro Code, and state statutes. And as described in the staff report, there is sufficient detail in the information that was provided to demonstrate how all the applicable criteria and standards are met or can be met through conditions of approval. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of the annexation and the site development review subject to the conditions of approval, and their decision was based on the staff report, the applicant materials, and all of the public testimony received thus far. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Planner Lindor. Let's see, we'll move on to applicant testimony. Is the applicant here to testify?
Yes.
Good
Can
evening.
you guys hear me? Welcome, thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Tim Taylor. I'm co-developer with Mosaic Management for the Cedar Brook project. My address is 1509 Southwest Sunset Boulevard, Suite 2B, Portland, Oregon, 97239. I appreciate the time to speak with you guys this evening and introduce the Cedar Brook project. First, I'd like to thank the former property owners, the Dick family, for being very patient the last 4 years going through this process. They've owned that property for almost close to 80 years. I also believe it's fitting to acknowledge 2 of my biggest mentors, former planning director Aldi Howard, and former mayor, the late great Mr. Jim Griffith. Both of those gentlemen hired me some 25 years ago when I was a lot younger, and I learned an incredible amount from them, and I wouldn't be sitting here tonight if it wasn't for them. I just would like to give some brief history about this property and the development. Sorry. How much time do we have to present?
There's not a specific time limit on the applicant's testimony, but I would suggest you try to keep it to maybe 7 to 10 minutes at most, if that's possible. Is that reasonable? How much were you hoping to present?
I think that 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, you think? I'll be real quick. I'll punctuate my opening statement. So
Tim, do what you need to do. If you need 15 minutes, make it happen.
Great, I appreciate it. Continuing, I'd like to give just some brief history about the site and the project itself, because I know there's a lot of public outcry about the development. When I first started looking at this property some 4 or 5 years ago, I was looking for the highest and best use on the community level. And with that, I was leaning towards affordable housing. Ironically, one of the developers I was working with was Related Northwest, who's now building the Terrace Glen affordable housing project along Greenberg Road. After the first pass with them, we decided that that wasn't going to be the best use for the site, primarily because of the traffic that would be generated and also with the parking. When we were looking at that, we were planning on doing 140 units and maxing out the height at 70 feet, which would be about 7 stories. So once we retreated from that option, the next best option we thought that to serve the community was assisted living and memory care. And what we found was that it generated much less traffic compared to the apartments, either market rate or affordable housing. And one of the big reasons for that too is with the site constraints of the property. I find that the development that we're proposing now with the assisted living and memory care facility aligns very well with the Washington Square regional center that's designated by Metro. And I just wanted to read real quick the what the intent is, just for people that aren't familiar with it. But the Washington Square is one of 8 regional centers designated in the Metro Regional Growth Plan because of its concentration of employment opportunities and stores that are accessible from around the region via 217, Hall Boulevard, Shoals Ferry, and multiple transit lines. We believe that the developments will create more employment opportunities within the area, particularly Metzger, will create the opportunity for families that live in the area to have their elderly loved ones live closer to them rather than being pushed out to McMinnville, Newburgh, and Forest Grove in these tertiary markets where land is more available. With that said, I'd like to introduce our team. Tonight I have the architect team with Linity Architecture, Kittleson Engineering, Kittredge Engineering, my co-developer Mosaic Management, and our land use attorney Wendy Kellington. We hope between all of us that we'll be able to address any questions, concerns, or comments that you all have tonight. And with that, I'll introduce Sam Thomas, who will give a brief PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, counselors. I'm going to take a moment to bring up the presentation. Can you all see the presentation?
Not yet.
Is there a way someone can help share my screen? Okay, I've got it.
All right, we can see them now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, counselors. My name is Sam Thomas. I am with Lenity Architecture, 3150 Kettle Court Southeast, Salem, Oregon, 97301. I wanted to start out by recognizing that the Planning Commission and the planning staff have done a detailed review. Both recommend approval. We've had 2 Planning Commission hearings where public comments were given, and there's been thoughtful consideration of staff's recommendation, applicant, and public testimony. And we believe the Planning Commission's recommendation is correct to recommend approval. And this proposal meets all applicable standards. So this is 159 assisted living suites, 22 memory care suites with 33 beds. They have shared common spaces, and this will be a state licensed facility. This gives you an image of where the project is located within the Washington Square Regional Plan. It is in the top northern corner with the blue box outline. That shows there's 2 to 4 story structures anticipated in this orange area. I just want to give you a brief background about Mosaic Management. They own and operate several senior care residences. They're based in Salem. They're excited to have this much needed senior housing option for area residents and their families, as Tim explained as well. The typical resident profile is a senior in their 80s. They have, some may experience symptoms of Alzheimer's and dementia. Those would be the memory care residents. And they're in relatively good physical health. Daily operations include meals served in a central dining area. There's indoor physical fitness and wellness activities. This is a safe environment and it's secure. There's staff on site 24/7. This is our proposed site plan. I wanted to take a moment to address some of the concerns from the public regarding the loading area, which is sort of on the south west of the site where the driveway from the Montage Lane cul-de-sac extends. We anticipate that service trucks and food vendors would use Greenberg Road, Hall Boulevard to enter the site. They would come out under the covered area, and then they would route around the site across the Montage Lane cul-de-sac, and then they would reverse into the loading area to make deliveries. This is a central location of the development and the proposal. You essentially have 2 wings with the memory care on the northwest corner, and then the assisted living would be the 4 stories on the central portion of the development site. So this serves as a central location to both kitchens for memory care and the assisted living side. Also for garbage service trucks, we anticipate as they're doing their normal service in the neighborhood of Montage or 92nd, they may enter from Montage Lane, use the cul-de-sac, service the bins that would be located partially underground in a refuse container. They would pull them out, service them above ground, and then back out and proceed on the route. This images give you a sense of what the interiors of the suites would look like. These are the floor plans for the assisted living and memory care suites. This is a view from Hall Boulevard looking at the covered entry to the garage and also the porte-cochere for the main assisted living drop-off. Here's a wider view along Hall Boulevard looking southwest. These are exterior renderings. The top is the Hall Boulevard portion looking southwest, and then the porte-cochere for the assisted living. Also have renderings of, this is the corner of 92nd and Southwest Hall Boulevard. And then this is the right image is a view of the memory care drop-off area with the screening area, as Agnes had pointed out in her staff presentation. I want to address some of the neighbor concerns quickly. Regarding parking, we feel that this site and this development are more than adequate based on comparable facilities. Few residents would own or have cars, only 5% at most for AL, and none of the memory care residents drive due to their mental impairments. Parking is generated by staff mostly, and there's a few daily visitors. We anticipate about 51 staff on site during shift change. Some will use public transit and carpooling, which is accessible from Hall Boulevard. This is a ratio of parking for similar facilities that Mosaic Management currently owns. So you can see that Cedar Brook is, for the ratio, is approximately in the middle between the lowest and the highest ratio of parking. This is also an urban site with transit. There's a bus stop line, a bus stop in front of the site that will be developed. This is an urban facility, so it's a little bit different from some of the other properties that Mosaic manages. So that has better public transit access. Traffic on the site and around, we have a facility van that takes residents to appointments. There's no on-street parking expected, and then no parking would be allowed on the Montage cul-de-sac extension. Loading areas, we do have screening between the drive aisle and the neighbor side. And delivery for vehicles and garbage trucks will mainly access from Hall Boulevard. And then refuse pickup would occur at the underground parking area, as I explained earlier. And this use generates a low traffic count compared to multifamily. Pedestrian safety on 92nd. This proposal will include street improvements on all frontages of public streets. New sidewalks will be built. There will be lighting adjacent to the site. Street improvements will include a new pedestrian connection that will go between 92nd and Hall Boulevard. There's public pedestrian access through the site from Montage Lane to Hall. And there's going to be no on-street parking on Hall or Montage. The vast majority of the site traffic, 95%, will come to the site from Hall Boulevard, as that's the main street. Only 5% is anticipated to use Montage Lane, with just 2 trips, 1 in and 1 out during the AM, and 3 trips, 1 in, 2 out during the PM peak traffic. We do not consider this heavy traffic in this local residential neighborhood. So the allowed alternative of development would be a multifamily development, up to 140 mid-rise multifamily units. This would create considerably more daily traffic. So regarding neighborhood compatibility and noise, as Tim mentioned, this is in the Washington Square Regional Center, and it anticipates a higher density development. Senior housing provides a soft transition between adjacent residential and Southwest Hall Boulevard traffic. Staff shift changes also occur at off-peak hours. And then finally, seniors are quiet neighbors. Regarding the dwelling unit definition, according to the proposal, we are not dwelling units. There are no kitchens in the individual units. Therefore, we do not meet the city's dwelling unit definition. We did a little bit of analysis. This is on the state standards and the state code references, showing that we do not meet the permanent cooking facilities within the units. All meals are served at a central dining facility. So in that case, it makes sense that the AL and MC units are not dwelling units under the city code. So this is an example of why dwelling unit definition applied here doesn't make sense. We have parking ratios based on dwelling units. And this proposal is consistent with the needed housing statutes. One of the opponent's attorneys claimed that requiring a private driveway that the public can use if the city can't require a public street. This is not relevant here. Regarding neighborhood compatibility, technically, compatibility means other requirements, they're not clear and objective and do not apply. Wendy, would you like to explain this section?
Sure. Wendy Tillington, attorney for the applicant, that, as Sam just mentioned, technically the clear and objective requirement for the development of housing would not apply, but that really doesn't matter here because the proposal meets all standards that are in the city code, whether they're clear and objective or not.
This is an aerial image of the subject property taken looking north. And these are a few images of the surrounding neighborhood. You can see the, this is from Hall Boulevard looking towards Southwest 92nd in Montage. This is Lehman Street at 92nd. And this is along Greenberg Road before you would turn onto Lehman Street. And this is the area of the Montage Lane where the cul-de-sac would be extended beyond the barricades to the subject property. And this is the project that Tim mentioned, Terrace Glen, that's on Greenberg Road, kind of similar nature, 4-story development. So in summary, staff recommended approval. The Planning Commission recommended approval as well. The proposal meets all approval standards. Proposal provides a needed housing type for Tigard. This provides additional jobs to local economy. Public infrastructure will be developed in an underserved area, including streetlights, sidewalks, and paths. And we respectfully request your approval to move forward with this important project. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Nolop, how many callers do we have on the line now?
Mr. Mayor, currently 8 callers in the queue.
Okay. So at this point, I'm hoping that they're all going to hear the same information and they can hear me now, correct?
You are correct, yes.
Okay. So I want to clarify a couple things before testimony begins. The first thing I want to make sure folks that are testifying are aware of is that this is a quasi-judicial process where the city council's decision-making role is objective and based on specific criteria that we would ask you to tailor your comments and your testimony to, because the approval criteria are the only things that we can make decisions about in a quasi-judicial process. This is all outlined in Oregon land use law, and we are essentially a judge and jury in this situation, looking at the information objectively and factually. And that sometimes is disappointing to people that have very strong beliefs and concerns about things that may not have anything to do with the approval criteria. And for that, I'm sorry. That is the process that we and the state that we live in and the laws that we have to follow. So to the extent that you can focus your testimony specifically on the approval criteria, which the city attorney outlined earlier, which included the Tigard Development Codes, Chapter 18.120, 18.210, 18.230, 18.410, 18.420, 18.670, 18.710, 18.720, 18.780, 18.910, 18.920, 18.930, and then our comprehensive goals comprehensive plan goals 1, 11, 12, and 14, and then the applicable Oregon revised statutes and the Metro Code. Those are all things that are in play here, but I would just strongly encourage you, if you want your feedback to have maximum impact, it needs to be tied specifically to one of those criteria, and that will help your testimony be most successful in being considered by the council. I am going to limit, if we've got 8 callers, 8 people to testify, I'm going to provide the full 3 minutes of time. But I am going to strictly enforce the 3 minutes. I've instructed our staff to actually mute your microphone at 3 minutes. So your testimony will be done at 3 minutes because you won't be able to speak any further. So that is how we're going to proceed. And Mr. Nolop, can you put let me make sure we've got everything we need. So we also had written comments, and written testimony was due, it says by 4:30 today, but I think we took it all the way up till the beginning of the meeting. Again, I'll remind anyone that wishes to testify, they should call in into 503-966-4101 and be put into the queue. Let me start with checking on whether any of the callers wish to challenge the impartiality of a city councilor. Are there any callers that wish to do that, Mr. Nolop? Do you know? Okay. City Attorney Rahala, how do you want to handle this? Because I think we're actually supposed to deal with this before we start getting testimony, right?
So yes, the recommendation for tonight is for that to be the first comment that they make, and then to proceed.
Okay.
Before deliberations, the decision needs to be or before deliberations, the announcement needs to be made.
Okay, I will try to prompt each caller at the beginning to determine whether or not they're challenging anybody. And then, yes, Mr. Nolop, as soon as they've answered that question and start their testimony, please begin the 3 minutes. And with that, I think we're ready for the first person to give their testimony.
Excellent. The first person will be Juanita Garno.
All right, Juanita, you are with us. Could you start Could you start by indicating whether you wish to challenge the participation or impartiality of any member of the City Council? And then if not, you can start with your testimony.
No, I don't wish to challenge anyone.
Okay, go ahead.
I live on Southwest 92nd. In the process of preparing for this evening's meeting, I was struck by the sheer volume of responses from the citizens. I now ask you, members of the City Council, to please indicate what percentage of our responses each of you have read. Mr. Mayor, can you respond?
This is a time for your testimony to us. And you've got 3 minutes now, less than that. So I would recommend that you not spend your time asking that question. That will take your entire testimony, probably.
It shouldn't. If you have not read them in their entirety, I further ask that you refrain from making a decision about the annexation and/or the proposed development until you have all done a complete reading of our comments. Please notice how many of your constituents have responded. Please take into consideration that so many people are opposed to this development and why we object. Know that we are not blindly opposed to development. We simply have issues with the proposal as currently designed. We don't want any of your traffic on 92nd Avenue or Borders or 90th. I understand that although all applicable criteria may have been met by the developers, your existing constituents must also be a factor in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nolop, will you put the next person through for testimony?
Yes, next person will be Robert Rudy.
Am I on?
You are. This is the mayor of Tigard, and you are on. My first question for you is whether you wish to challenge the impartiality or participation of any member of the City Council. If not, you can just proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I do not plan on challenging the independence of the or conflicts of interest of the council.
Okay, go ahead.
I vehemently oppose the approval of this development application by the Tigard City Council. My elements of my testimony refer to all the chapters that you've identified, Mr. Mayor Snyder, and more specifically related to Chapter 18.710.030C3. I did submit an extensive written testimony prior to today, and hopefully you guys will take a look at that because it's got a lot of elements you need to take into consideration before you make your decision. Good evening, and Tigard City Council members, Mayor Snyder, and the Planning Department staff and others in attendance. Apparently, the developer and their legal representative took an extensive amount of time beyond their allotted 5 minutes with the Planning Commission hearing. So hopefully, I get maybe a little bit more than my 3 minutes. You cut me off, you do, I guess. I first wish to thank all of you for your opportunity to provide verbal testimony tonight in opposition to the City Council's approval Cedar Brook Senior Care Facility Zoning Change, Annexation, and Development Act. As a 32-year resident of Tigard, a 30-year property owner, and a current 18-year business Tigard owner, I'm testifying tonight regarding a number of factual violations within the City Staff Report, Section 4, titled Public Comments, and the City Staff attempts to have the applicant and the developer's formal application submission documents corrected and completed to accurately and comprehensively depict their planned development intent, which is before you tonight. This testimony tonight is in addition to my multiple written and verbal testimonies submitted to you by City staff to this point in time. However, the major issue I want to discuss tonight is the element of incomplete, inaccurate, and deceptive record documents provided by the development team and the required developer's affidavit of compliance with the Tiger Development Review Protocols. Here's the issue. My verbal testimonies began on August 26, 2020, written testimonies for the subsequent neighborhood meeting, with my email written testimonies beginning on August 30th, 2020, roughly a year and a half ago. A little background on me. I do design review in my business, and so I'm familiar with going through documents looking for inconsistencies. In my own personal submission testimonies, including tonight's, all the way back to the developer's August 2020 pre-application conference, I've attempted to inspire transparency, accuracy, comprehensive, and verifiable record document testimonies and attachments to identify and resolve misrepresentations, discrepancies, inaccuracies, and contradictions, and the bad faith effort provided by this specific development team and its bad fit development aspirations on this specific subject property and its annexation into the city. And there definitely are better, more sensible options for the land use development designs, such as my development design exemplified by my Exhibit O attachment to my testimony earlier today for your consideration as an alternate land use development solution. In my humble opinion, this alternate land use design that fits the surrounding neighborhood plus the city's Washington Square regional objectives and would eliminate what would become a disastrous traffic congestion issue when compared to 3 shifts of 100 plus staff and other service employees of the facility, impacting the parking, noise, and congestion 3 times
Mr.
a day,
Rudy, you're at
every
3
week,
minutes. I'm going to have
every
to
year.
cut you off.
All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, really quick. I didn't get his name. Did I miss his name? Can you help me with that, Mr. Nollop?
I believe Rob Rudy.
Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Nollop, the next caller.
Next caller, Jan Eric.
Thank you.
Hi, Erickson.
Thank you for joining
So,
us.
Agnes-
Do you wish to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council? If not, you can start with your testimony whenever you're ready, and you'll have 3 minutes.
I do not wish to. Agnes, could you put up my first image, please?
Yes, let me just get it up right now.
Okay, so I'm going to start talking. Over the weekend, I reread most of the public comments and was amazed at the sincere and heartfelt comments submitted by so many Metzger residents. As a group, we made an effort to be heard. For many people, this was the first time they participated in the public planning process. In honor of their sincere efforts to save our neighborhood, I would like to commend our neighbors and the Metzger community. To be clear, image 2, please, Agnes. To be clear, the neighborhood is against the proposed Cedar Brook facility, hands down. In reading almost 600 pages of public comments, I only saw one person who was in favor of the proposed facility. The existing neighborhood residents do not feel like the proposed facility will improve the neighborhood, but will instead degrade and reduce the quality of their life. Why? It does not fit into the neighborhood as far as type of building. The building is too big for the scale or for the site it is located on, and the scale is overwhelming to the existing residents. Image 3, please. The neighborhood is against the increase in traffic. The streets are currently active and lively, part of the neighborhood life. Many people regularly use the street for family activities. Kids ride their bicycles, dogs walk their humans. People meet and socialize. Image 4, please. These streets provide walkability and livability that is so valued in the community. Image 5, please. The increase in traffic poses a safety issue, plus all the additional noise from delivery trucks, ambulances, and vehicles cutting through the neighborhood. Image 6, please. City Council members, please read the entire recorded 600 pages of public comments before making your decision. Please carefully consider how this development would affect the extremely walkable and currently pleasant neighborhood, and how the proposed facility, if allowed to go through, could negatively affect the existing residents' quality of life. After that, then please vote to deny the proposed site development plan and annexation, as it is not good for the existing Metzger residents. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Nollop, next caller.
Yes. Next caller, Susan Bilkey.
right, Susan,
Yes.
thanks for joining us. Do you wish to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council? If not, you're welcome to start your testimony.
No, I don't wish to challenge. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
I'm not able to address code, but I have in the past, unfortunately, because I'm blind, and I've had no one help me look through the code for this. But I want to say I've commented on many, many other developments in the past, and I oppose this in part because of where it is. It's in a bad location. It doesn't fit in that community. I think there'd be much better location for this development and for the type of it. I also oppose the removal of the oak trees. Oak trees are one of the most valuable species of trees we have in Oregon. It provides shade, home for many rare species, and it'd be just a very sad day if they left. What I propose is that the city buy this as a park for the local neighborhood, for people to enjoy the trees, the little wetland that could be enhanced, and a place for kids to play and adults and kids to just enjoy the area. We don't need more traffic. I've talked about traffic many, many times in Tigard. It's horrible. And this is just going to add more traffic to the neighborhood, more traffic to Greenberg, more traffic to Hall. It doesn't end. One time I brought a stack of developments to City Council to show people how many developments are going through. None are opposed. None are stopped. You need to stop this, okay? It doesn't fit in the neighborhood. There are people that have moved out already because of the fear that this is causing. So please do the right thing. Please have them build it somewhere else that's more appropriate, closer to shops and things like that. Not in this kind of neighborhood. That's an older residential neighborhood. Save the area, protect the trees, protect the wetland, and enhance it and leave it for citizens, okay? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Nullup, please put the next caller through.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, no problem. Kathleen Noonan is our next caller.
All right, Kathleen, do you wish to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council on this matter?
No, I do not.
Okay, please proceed with your testimony.
Okay, my name is Kathleen Noonan, and I live in the Brownstone Townhouse just west of this proposed development. And I would like to address the safety and the livability issues and why we would like this plan rejected. For Tigard City Code 18210C, the code outlines minimizing the potential adverse impacts of commercial uses on residential uses by carefully locating and selecting the types of uses allowed in each commercial zone. This development will greatly impact our community, creating adverse impacts. Over the last several months, 9 brownstone owners have sold their homes because of the possibility of this development. This site is not carefully located, as this is a quiet neighborhood without adequate streets, sidewalks, and land to accommodate a building of this size. Code section 18410C states to maintain the traffic carrying capacity of nearby streets to minimize hazardous conditions. This plan eliminates all of our street parking, forcing residents and guests to park outside of our community on narrow streets that don't have sidewalks. This in turn will create hazardous conditions for all of our guests and residents that need to now walk at least a half a block to a block to get to their homes. Code 18.230 states the purpose of this chapter is to provide standards that promote quality development and enhance the livability, walkability, and safety of the community. This plan does none of those things. This plan involves opening a back entrance, which is a direct route to the parking garage. I know that many have said that only 5% will be going through the back, but I believe that that is inaccurate and doesn't make any logical sense because Kittleson and Associates released a report in May of 2020 stating that 484 cars would be increased daily because of this site proposal and that 20% would utilize the back entrance. Now they're saying 5%. So they've suddenly changed the amounts overnight. We believe the numbers are going to be higher than 20%. And even if it's only 20%, that's a 51% increase in our traffic daily. We have children riding their bikes, people with their dogs, and families walking up and down the street enjoying exercise and neighborhood community. Also in Code 18.670A, it states that land uses and qualities will all contribute to create a desirable, livable community. This proposal does not live up to that standard. The safety issues for outdoor activities are a huge concern, as are the noise and traffic congestion. Many have sold their homes, more are considering this option. And if this is approved, proving this is not desirable, this abuts straight up next to our buildings, within 5 feet of some of the front doors of some of the residents. This is not desirable for anyone here at Brownstone. The city's new vision for their 2020 to 2025 plan is an equitable community that is
You're at 3
walkable,
minutes, and I'm
healthy,
going to have to
and
stop your
accessible
testimony.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Nullip, next caller.
Yes. Next caller, Tracy Brophy.
All right. Tracy, I first need to ask if you are wanting to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council on this matter. Otherwise, you can start your testimony now.
Okay, yes, I would like to if Darlene Dick is still on the council or the planning committee of any sorts, because I received an email from her on March 3rd saying that I was discriminating against senior citizens having a safe place to live. I can send the email over if I need to, but basically it's, I'll just read verbatim. Good morning, Tracy. Why are you so against senior citizens having a safe place to live? This reeks and sounds like discrimination against the elderly to try and stop a safe place for senior citizens. This project would give the elderly a place to live near shopping, restaurants, and medical care. Someday you too will be a senior citizen, which I already am, so she didn't even look me up. Do you want to be discriminated against just because you are old and need a safe place to live? That was in part to, I'm guessing, because she had access to the information that, some of the information that we had submitted and discussed. And I, for one, am a real estate agent, so completely understand the development of the field. And, you know, we all knew that was going to happen. However, the affordable housing portion of it, I question. So I don't know if you are starting me now or.
Well, I think we need to address the issue you've raised. Darlene Dick is not a member of the city council and never has been. I guess I want to just verify whether or not you, as part of this proceeding, it's important that we get clarity as to whether you are challenging the impartiality of the members of the city council, which include Council President Heidi Lube, City Councilor Liz Newton, City Councilor John Goodhouse, City Councilor Jeanette Shaw, or myself, Mayor Jason Snyder. Are you wanting to challenge the impartiality of any of those members of the city council?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you. And why don't you proceed with your testimony?
Okay. Let's see, let me go back. Sorry, because I had that. So I pulled that up and need to go back to my documents here. I'm going to address a couple different things, but mostly 18.420, which establishes minimum standards for landscaping, screening, and tree canopy. And I'm going to use mostly because they have not given us any renderings of where the driveway coming into the garbage and down into the parking garage. That's never really been shown. It's always all the pretty stuff, which is right literally in front of 5 or 6 of us. That's our front door. It's 5 feet from that. So there's with minimal trees, there's not a fence, a wall, a barrier of any sort. So we'll get all of that noise coming in for all deliveries, which are at all hours of all the time we're going to have. And they're not always going to come through Hall. They will be coming from Greenberg Road. Coming off of Hall will be a lot harder, but it'll be much easier to come through 92nd and come in the back way. There won't be a one-way street. They're going to be able to go both ways on there. The streets that are adjacent to the facility, that's the only portions of the street that they are putting in street lights and sidewalks, which in those particular spots are very small in comparison to the entire neighborhood that they're going to affect. And we already have lights and a sidewalk where they're putting one on the other side of the street. Affordable housing, the reason we discussed affordable housing was not, yes, we understand that there could be a 70,000 foot apartment building, but that's not what we were talking about when we all, this development was first put into place. There was supposed to be additional townhomes like what we have now, which is affordable housing for people wanting to purchase a home, not affordable housing just to live in. The housing that is for the memory care, which there are, just looking online, are 19. So there isn't that they'd have to go out to Sherwood or Forest Grove. There's plenty. That's just in Tiger. That's not Beaverton. You know, in the surrounding areas, there's plenty of that kind of housing there. And this isn't for low income memory care or assisted living. This will be a fairly substantial cost to be living in this facility. Again, just as everyone else has said, the livability and the walkability, which is supposed to be so important to Tigard, has been completely tossed aside for our neighborhood, which is a very small community with, as you could see from the pictures that I believe Jan presented, that is on the daily. Those pictures weren't, we didn't just go, hey, everybody get together so we can have some photos for our testimony. That's a daily living for us here. And that would be, I mean, completely taken away from us with the traffic that will be coming in.
You were at 3 minutes. I'm going to have to stop your testimony.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Nolip, next person.
Next caller, Stephen Perry.
Yeah, it's Stephen. Hi. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to listen to the residents here. We've been shortchanged throughout this whole thing. And I just want to tell you that it's 3 minutes and you guys give all kinds of courtesies and so forth to the applicant, which I think is quite unfair. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I've been a resident of Mesker for 68 years, so my whole life.
1 second, please. Mr. Mayor, I don't think we've got confirmation of impartiality.
That's correct.
No, I was gonna let him testify first and then ask because he'd started, but we can go ahead. Stephen, do you wish to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council to participate in this matter?
No, sir, not at this time, but I'd reserve the right to do so in the further. Thank you.
Okay, well, now is your time to do so. So I understand your request to reserve your right, but now would be the time you'd have to tell us. But go ahead and start with your testimony, and then at the end of your testimony, if you changed your mind, let us know.
Thank you. Anyway, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to let you know I've been a resident of this area for 60 plus years. My parents bought on the corner of 92nd and Lehman, which is very much the active part of this area right now. I also have another home on 92nd. I still have both the homes. My family was raised here. My daughter's raising her family. This is a tragedy that if you put this in. Now, I just want to say to you that the tragedy lies within Tigard, an equitable community that is walkable, healthy, and accessible for everyone. Our strategic priorities: set the standards for excellence in public service and customers' experience. Create a well-connected, attractive, and accessible pedestrian network. Ensure development and growth support suspicion. None of which are met here. These areas around here have no sidewalks, the streets, and I tell you what, I've been here for all these years. I was an airline pilot and I commuted back and forth. So I've been here for many, many years. None of this is here. We have no sidewalks. Kids are walking on the side of the road, competing with traffic. And you want to now increase this? Very, very unusual. Let me go back to 18230-2, which is dwelling units. The applicant on 12 different occasions says there's no dwelling. They just showed you a picture of dwelling units. Their lawyer states 12 different times 12 dwelling units. The state Oregon law ORS 496-594, which states dwelling means real or personal property within the state's inhabited as principal residence of dwelling owners or a tenant. These are dwelling units, ladies and gentlemen. These are dwelling units where human beings are living. You can't put assisted living on a 4-level deal. We just have up the street on Hall Boulevard, they said, well, this is a need. It's not a need. We already have it up here. 2 stories. And let me say this to you right now. It was very comical because one of the applicants who has all the time, I only have 3 minutes, so I'm making this really quick, and I'm sorry. And I hope I'm not mumbling too bad, but he says, if we build this, you can have your loved ones live near. Are you kidding me? I have my mother-in-law living in assisted living right now in a beautiful place. I wouldn't put her in a 4-story fire trap to save my life if it's free. We have this is a no-win situation, ladies and gentlemen. It really is.
You're at 3 minutes. I'm going to have to stop your testimony.
Well, I got interrupted.
Mr. Nolop, did he have 3 minutes from the time that he ended his answer about being the impartiality question? Did he have a full 3 minutes?
He did, yes. The total time was 4 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Next caller, please.
Next caller is Jim Long.
Mr. Long, good evening. First question for you is whether or not you wish to challenge the impartiality of any member of the City Council. If so, please state so, and if not, please begin with your testimony.
Yes, I would like to challenge, or I'd like to raise questions. As nearby resident Tracy had stated, she had gotten a letter from a Darlene Dick, and on the website it says that Darlene Dick is an alternate on the Planning Commission. So that's the question. Maybe she wasn't a member of the Planning Commission, but she was an alternate on the Planning Commission according to the internet. And I wonder, have any members of the planning or of the City Council ever discussed any of this with the Dick family? Was she appointed to be an alternate? And it just seems like there's some questions there. So I'm wondering what the answer is on that. It seems like there's plenty of opportunity for City Council to discuss this with the Dick family.
So, Mr. Long, we can ask each member of the City Council, since you've asked that specific question, and City Attorney Rahala may want to add, but if any of us had, we should have disclosed that when I asked if anyone had any ex-parte contact to disclose. I can ask it again to verify that no members have. I have not had any contact. In fact, I've had specifically no contact about this topic with all members of the Planning Commission. I met with one a week or two ago about a different topic, and we were super clear that, in fact, the extent of the discussion was, look forward to watching the public hearing. That was the entirety of the discussion, no content. So I don't know if any other members of the council need to disclose any further discussion, but I think your answers earlier already stood. Okay, I see head no from Council President Lube and Councilor Shaw and Councilor Goodhouse. Councilor Newton, can you just confirm? And then we'll go to City Attorney Rahala.
I guess my head shaking no was, yeah, I haven't had any contact with anyone, so.
Okay, I don't have you on video.
No, I
right
haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, so, no, I have not. Thank you for asking. And I
City
believe that Darlene Dick is no longer an alternate to the Planning Commission. My understanding is that she resigned a while ago.
All right. Thank you, City Attorney.
Yes, Council, that's so I'd like to clarify for the record. Darlene Dick was an alternate member of the city's Planning Commission, and she did submit her resignation prior to this hearing. She did not participate in any way in this hearing or this case.
Before the Planning Commission, you're saying?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Not just before this hearing, but before this even went to the Planning Commission?
correct. She was not a member of Planning Commission when this was before Planning Commission.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Long, with all that clarification, do you wish to challenge any member of the city council for their impartiality in this case?
Well, I can't see the city council. I'm just here on the phone providing testimony, so I can't see the see what's happening. But it seems like she was on the she was an alternate, and you had earlier said she was not on it. So I just wonder the veracity of the whole thing. But
Mr.
you know, if you're all
Mr. Long, I
saying
said she's not a member of the city.
Okay, interrupt. Go ahead, interrupt me. Go ahead. Go ahead, interrupt me, please.
Well, Mr. Long, I'm trying to clarify whether, and I'm going to ask the question again because you're providing responses to questions I didn't ask. So are you wanting to challenge the impartiality of a member of the city council? That includes me, Mayor Jason Snyder, City Council President Heidi Lube, City Councilor John Goodhouse, City Councilor Liz Newton, or City Councilor Jeanette Shaw? That's the question, yes or no?
Who are you? Who are you? I can't see you. I don't know. So I'm just wondering.
I just said I was Mayor Jason Snyder. I am still Mayor Jason Snyder.
Oh, I thought you said you were that you were this, and then there was Mayor Jason Snyder. So I misunderstood. I can't see this because of the way the technology is set up. It's not your typical hearing. So
I apologize for that. I think you are familiar with the 5 city councilors or 4 city councilors and myself. Do you want to challenge the impartiality of any member of the city council?
I wanted to raise the issue, the question, and the veracity of it is that she was an alternate on the Planning Commission. So that raises questions right there. I think that's all I need to say about it at this time. I have no idea, your contacts, I don't know.
City Attorney Rahala, how do we proceed when we have someone that is not answering yes or no to that question? I'm not really sure how to proceed. I know I'm supposed to clarify that there's not a challenge, but I'm not getting that answer. So what do you recommend here?
So Council, we have clarified for the record that Darlene Dick did not participate in this proceeding, either at Planning Commission or otherwise. And I'm comfortable proceeding that Mr. Long's comment has been preserved for the record, and we can proceed with continuing on.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Yeah, I just want to add, I just looked through the emails. It looks like the Darlene Dick's resignation that went out was in January of this year. So if that helps for a context, Darlene Dick did resign from Planning Commission in January of 2022.
All right, and I just want to note that I've asked for a clear yes or no, and we've not received one. So I've asked the city attorney for their advice, and we're proceeding, I guess, as if there was not a challenge to the impartiality of a member of the council. Mr. Long, go ahead with your 3 minutes of testimony.
Thank you, sir. I'm here. I'm chair of CPO 4M, Citizen Participation Organization 4M. Our mission is to encourage and empower citizen involvement. CPO 4M has voted a couple of times and unanimously supports the annexation, the proposed annexation of the proposed development. It seems a little bit of a stretch, and not just a stretch, but perhaps a little shady and sneaky that the applicant is doing this to avoid county development codes that have existed for decades and have particular zoning. CPO 4M opposes the annexation because previous annexations have not built sidewalks as they were promised. And there's a lot of testimony I put in my testimony that I submitted earlier today. But I'm going to go ahead and also cite and say that we agree with the testimony of Ken Dobson and Rob Rudy. They cited a lot of community development codes, and their points were very well stated, and you need to consider them. And I would be surprised if you didn't take time to consider them before making a decision on this. The proposed cul-de-sac is not allowed due to code 18.190.030.h.2. The standards are not clear and objective. You have some unclear and subjective decisions that have been made here by the Planning Commission and the staff at the Planning Department. The Tigard Community Development Code 18.9.020 relates to the cul-de-sac and the Dolan and takings. And that's an important thing because that was a case before the Supreme Court that the city of Tigard lost in. The revision clearance standards have not been met. That's Tigard Code 18.930.030. The Planning Commission rescheduled the public hearing on February 28th, which violated the city code. Here we had 75 to 90 people from CPO4M who were on that virtual testimony, and none of them got to talk. There was not the 14-day notice. Only gave 14-day notice when they should have been giving more time for that. The Planning Commission's rescheduled hearing violated the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed development and annexation is not in the city's interest. It fails to provide adequate protection for nearby residential properties and will adversely affect transportation system and quality of urban services. I believe it was Kathleen Noonan who cited how there were nine residents or families that have moved out because of this, or after this this proposed application has been started, and that's not good for the city. That's not in the best interest of the city. It's not beneficial to the city in a number of ways. So I think that's a consideration also.
You're 3 minutes up. I'm going to have to stop your testimony.
All right, Mr. Nollup, who is the next caller?
Mr. Mayor, one more caller entered the queue, Dolly Specht.
All right, Dolly, thanks for joining us. First, need to ask whether you wish to challenge the participation or impartiality of any member of the City Council in this matter. And
no,
then if
I'm good.
not,
No.
Okay, then you can proceed with your testimony, please.
I'm good, and I'm clocking myself as of now, too. Hello, I'm Dolly Specht. I am currently I serve as the vice chair for your committee on community engagement. My testimony is more of just a general thing. I have participated in as a part of the task force for the the Washington Square Regional Center. And in that capacity, I was able to talk to really a whole lot of people, almost in the hundreds, walking Washington Square Mall, whatever. And in that program, not once did I see anything on the Cedar Brook development. I didn't see that in any of the planning or whatever. So that's just one of the things there. I'm not exactly in the area that is directly affected by this development, but because I am also on the steering committee of CPO4M, I was able to participate in all of those talks. That I can tell you, in all the 30 years I've lived here, that's one of the most vibrant and active conversations I have seen. And one of the things that really concerns me about this, Mayor Snyder and everybody on the council, is a trust factor. And I just want to bring that up and make it just bring it up here, because there's so many things that have happened in relation to this procedure. And I appreciate very much that you started with an apology by saying we needed to stick to the letter of the law and all those things, that's what we're going to bring up. So emotions aside, I would respectfully request also that maybe the city also needs to apologize to all the 200 plus people who showed up to that meeting that we waited over an hour for, and we were not given a chance to speak when we were so prepared to do so at a time, and the reason was given was that the IT of Tigard was not sufficient and there were technical glitches. That is an embarrassment to the city. I was personally embarrassed because I was there. And as a matter of fact, I logged in from Hawaii. I was on vacation on the beach when I logged in, and I had better Wi-Fi than the city of Tigard did at that time. So that is my testimony. It's more of, can you please pay attention? I know that there are laws that you have to follow. Everybody does, and those things. But The reason why there are people on the council is because we have to look at you and see, for you to make the judgment calls on what quality is affected in the city that you govern. And that might not be in the books. That's all I have to say, and I have 13 seconds to go. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Dolly. Appreciate the testimony. All right, Mr. Nolip, are there any other callers in the queue?
Mr. Mayor, there are no callers in the queue.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all the folks that testified, provided a lot of detailed citations for concerns about the code, which is actually really appreciated compared to, I would say, almost every other quasi-judicial proceeding I've participated in the last 10 years on the City Council. So that's much appreciated. Staff, I think this is now a time for you to respond to testimony. I think I just want to set that up with the expectation that every single citation and specific that was raised in the testimony, I'd like, and I'm guessing the rest of the council is going to want to hear responses to each of those. And I guess I'm wondering whether that can be done in this format, or if we need to, if you need additional time to respond adequately and thoughtfully in a detailed way to each one of those individually. I wrote them all down, and there are a lot of them. So I guess I just want to ask staff how they want to proceed on that front.
Well, I wrote down, I feel like most of them as well. So I would be happy to start going through them. And if there is something that I had missed, then you can let me know. And I'll also turn it over to Jeremy to talk about the engineering requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to touch on was testimony from Mr. Rudy about one of his comment letters not being included as part of the record. I just wanted to be clear that the application for this development was submitted January of 2021. The letter and email that he's referring to was during the neighborhood meeting process, which is outside of a formal application process. So the applicant did include his testimony or the email exchange between the applicant and Mr. Rudy as part of the record. However, that's not required per the code because it happened outside of the application process. So that was one thing that I did want to mention. There were several comments related to 18420, which is our landscaping and tree canopy standards. So our code does allow, when you're developing, to basically have a tree removal and preservation plan. We don't have any minimum requirements for preserving certain trees. It's really up to the developer. We have certain canopy requirements that they need to meet for the site, as well as the parking area, and the both standards for the site and the parking lot are met based on the urban forestry plan that was submitted. There were several several code citations that Ms. Noonan brought up. I think one of them was 18410C and 18230. So the 18410 is our off-street parking and loading chapter, and 18230 is our apartments chapter. And so basically the code citations that were quoted were purpose statements for that development chapter. And so all the standards that are within that chapter are meant to implement the purpose. So we basically state that the proposal meets the purpose based on meeting all of the standards within that chapter that are supposed to support the purpose. The other one that was brought up was also a purpose statement, and that was in 18670. That was the Washington Square Regional Plan District chapter. So that chapter actually is not applicable to this development. Standards in 18670 apply to non-residential and mixed-use developments only. So regarding,
can I just
Sure.
stop you there? Because when the city attorney reviewed the applicable standards at the beginning of the procedure, she did cite 18.670. So are you saying it does or does not apply? I'm confused by that.
So because it is located in the Washington Square Regional Plan District, we just made a finding that basically, this chapter is for this certain area, which is where the site is located. However, none of the standards in that chapter apply because it's a residential development and not mixed use or non-residential.
Okay, so it's cited, but the citation is basically to exclude it from the requirements.
Right.
Because they don't apply. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So then there was some, I think the code citation was also in 18420. It was regarding screening of garbage areas. So the chapter 18420 actually just like outlines what the standard is for different types of screening. But it would be in 18230, the apartment chapters in the development standards that regulate where screening would be required. So for this site, it's required along the south property line because the zoning to the south is R5 and S3 screening is required for properties that are within the R1 to R12 zone. There is also requirements for screening of loading and trash areas, and there is screening being provided, but not from adjacent property owners. Excuse me. This requirement for screening service areas is from the street only. So it wouldn't be from adjacent properties. There was a question about the definition of dwelling units. So dwelling units, we can't apply whatever the state definition is. We have to go by the definition that's in our chapter 1830, which speaks to having permanent cooking, sanitation, and sleeping facilities. So what we consider that would be a stove or something that is not movable like a microwave. It would have to be something permanent. Let's see here. There was some noticing requirements that were brought up that were not done in accordance with code, and that's in chapter 18710. Those are, I think, are land use procedures and applications chapter. And we did provide the initial required 20-day mailed notice for the January 10th hearing for Planning Commission. That was the initial hearing. At that hearing, there was a continuance. There's not an additional notice that's required to be sent if a hearing is continued to a date and time certain. So there wasn't an additional notice sent for the Planning Commission hearing or any ones that were continued after. They were all continued to date and time certain.
Agnes, was that the one that received the notice? Was that the one that then never happened? I mean, I hear you saying it was continued, but I don't. My sense from that evening, because I got contacted by probably close to 30 people during the IT disaster, whatever we want to call it.
Sure.
Did an actual hearing happen? Because it seemed like nothing ended up happening. So is that really what happened? A continuance?
Well, so the initial hearing, which was January 10th, that was when staff was recommending denial of the application. And the applicant had submitted a letter where we basically didn't open up any of the public testimony, and the applicant requested Planning Commission to continue it to the February 28th date, which was basically the one that you heard that was total chaos. And at that hearing, there was no public testimony, nothing was opened up. It was then continued to March 14th. And March 14th was truly, you know, the time that the hearing actually happened.
So we provided a note. I mean, what I'm gathering just factually here is we provided a notice for a January 10th hearing that the applicant then requested that nothing be considered. There then wasn't any further notice. We then had a hearing in February 28th, you said, that was the IT disaster and nothing happened and no notice. And then a continued to a March 10th date and again, no notice. Is that because there isn't one required?
So yeah, March 14th.
March 14th.
So there wasn't one required throughout the whole process. I was very, we didn't send a formal notice, but I would email out to everybody that was in the parties of record list, you know, a revised notice showing the updated dates. It was also reposted on the city's website as well. And then prior to this hearing, there was a 20-day notice that was sent out and posted 14 days and also published.
Thanks for those clarifications. Do you have additional testimony?
I think that was it. Oh, the only other thing that I had was Ms. Specht had stated that during her her participation in the regional plan didn't touch anything on Cedar Brook, and I guess I just wanted to be clear that those kind of are two separate processes. One of them is a regional plan effort, whereas this is specific to a development site.
And then were you going to talk about the cul-de-sac in 18920, or is that going to be Jeremy?
I will turn that over to Jeremy.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. So I have kind of a list here of the code sections, so I'll go through it on the engineering side, one of which will be the cul-de-sac, so I'll get to that in a little bit. There were a lot of kind of general comments regarding the traffic on local streets. So that would be 18910-030A in terms of the improvements required for this development. So the code requirements for this proposed development is half-street improvements along the three frontages, so Southwest Hall Boulevard, Southwest 92nd Avenue, as well as Southwest Montage. So the applicant is providing those half-street improvements along all of those frontages in accordance with our code requirements. A lot of the testimony was related to existing streets in the adjacent neighborhood. So that would not be a code criteria requirement to improve just existing streets outside of the development frontage. Furthermore, most of the streets that were referenced in the photographs and in the testimony are actually outside of City of Tigard jurisdiction. So they're actually located within the Washington County jurisdiction. So furthermore would not be part of the code criteria for this development. I will let the applicant's traffic engineer address. There were some comments regarding the traffic routing from the Kittleson traffic study. So this would be 18910-030CC in terms of the traffic study requirements. So the applicant provided an initial traffic study and then a revised traffic study upon more detailed analysis of the specific site. So I'll let them speak specifically if there are questions related to how those exact percentage distributions were arrived at. But in terms of the comments about whether those distributions are correct or not, I would just comment that even if it was the 20% number that was the higher end of the ratio, that would still be well below our local street standards are designed for approximately 1,500 vehicles per day. The total trip generation for the entire site, as determined by the traffic study, is 484 vehicles per day, the majority of which, as was indicated in the study, will be routed to Hall Boulevard. So even if it was the 20% number, that would still be way below the anticipate or what local streets are designed for, which is the 1,500 vehicles per day. For the cul-de-sac question, this was Mr. Jim Long stating that the cul-de-sac is not allowed. So per our city code, so this would be 18.910.030L. So a cul-de-sac is required as a terminus to a public street when other standards in the code precludes a full street connection and you're through circulation. So that is precluded by the rough proportionality test as submitted with the applicant's memorandum. And so when that is precluded, a public street must terminate with a turnaround for safety reasons, for clear delineation between public right-of-way and the private property. So the applicant has proposed that public cul-de-sac terminus and that all of the street characteristics, right-of-way width, pavement widths are all in accordance with our Community Development Code table. So that would be 18.910.030E for your minimum right-of-way widths and street characteristics, as well as Community Development Code table 18.910.1. There was also, Mr. Long commented that the vision clearance standards were not being met. 18.930 would be that code section. There's no evidence in the record that the vision clearance standards are not being met. All the evidence submitted by the applicant shows that they're in compliance with those vision clearance standards. I believe those are all the code sections that were referenced. If you have any other sections that you'd like me to address, I'd be happy to.
I'll check with members of the council. Are there any other sections of the code? And Councilor Newton, I still don't have you on video, so you're gonna have to raise your hand electronically if others can see you. I'm not sure why. Let me try to. Okay, Councilor Newton, go ahead.
I think maybe the question I have, it's not really about a specific code section, so maybe I should wait until we get to council questions. It's generally about the street, so I'll wait until we get to council questions. Thanks.
Okay. Let's see. I think process-wise, we are now to rebuttal by the applicant to testimony.
Hi, my name is Christine Connolly. I'm going to start us off. I'm a traffic engineer with Kittleson and Associates with an address at 851 Southwest 6th Avenue, Suite 600. It's in Portland, Oregon, 97204. We really appreciate staff's clarification regarding the code requirements. We'd just like to provide a little additional clarification on the public testimony regarding the draft memorandum that was prepared by Kittleson Associates, and clarify that that was done prior to any formal traffic impact analysis being conducted for the site. The estimates were intended to address early issues with the city before submitting the application. And so it was preliminary in nature with a draft stamp and provided a conservative 20% estimate to Montage to demonstrate why there was not a need for a public street extension through the site, even with that higher traffic volume in the memo. So that discrepancy, right, that 20%, the estimate is superseded by the formal January 2021 traffic impact analysis that was prepared for the site and submitted with the application. And in that, we did a detailed analysis of the trip distribution and refine those estimates based on several factors, including a site visit and observations of existing traffic patterns, the existing roadway conditions in the vicinity and speed limits, comparison of travel time estimates using Google Maps. I don't know if you've ever done that. Operations analysis of the Hall and Greenberg intersection that showed pretty relatively low existing queues and delays on the movements that would get people to the site from Greenberg Road, so the northbound right and the westbound left turn lane, indicated that people could pretty easily travel that way. And then we also observed and in our traffic counts noticed that there are relatively low traffic volumes today, making movements that would indicate any cut through traffic through the neighborhood. So that indicates that there's not an existing issue that needs to be addressed. And finally, just the nature of the site trips being primarily generated by staff and visitors. The staff can be directed to use the entrance on Hall Boulevard, and visitors tend to use major streets to visit sites such as this, and then the primary entrances. And that's what led to a refined estimate of 5% of traffic entering via Montage Lane in the formal TIA. And if you want any more information, we summarized this in our March 28th, 2022 memorandum, which was submitted during the open record period for the Planning Commission hearing process. And as Jeremy, thank you, pointed out, it really doesn't matter. 20% versus 5% is still very low traffic volumes on Montage Lane and well below the standard for a local street. The other thing I wanted to point out is that after the annexation, the site could be developed with 140 market rate apartment units, which would generate more traffic than the current proposal with assisted living and memory care. Thank you. And I am going to turn it over to Sam, correct? Unless there are any questions regarding my testimony.
Traffic. I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, councilors. Again, Sam Thomas with Lenity Architecture. I was going to do a quick screen share again to talk about the site layout in a little bit more detail based on some of the public comments received. I wanted to address that, as Jeremy pointed out as well, this site has 3 frontages: Hall Boulevard, 92nd Avenue, and Montage Lane. Along each of those frontages, there will be sidewalk improvements that are public, and then also street lights that are yet to be, the exact location is yet to be determined, but it will be in compliance with city code standards.
I'm sorry, I can't see the plan. Can everybody else see it?
No, I'm not seeing anything if you're sharing your screen. Sorry, I thought you were still bringing it up.
Oh, sorry. Let me do that one more time, please. Are you able to see it now?
Looks like we're going to be.
Okay.
I'm seeing green. Are other people seeing the actual slide? Yes.
I can see the slide.
I can see the slide.
I'll bring it up full screen now. So on our proposed site plan, I'll just start again. There's going to be a public sidewalk along the entirety of Hall Boulevard's frontage for the project. 92nd Avenue will connect to Hall Boulevard. So there is no public sidewalk along Hall Boulevard currently. The portion of the site frontage along 92nd Avenue, there is no sidewalk. So this is the proposal to include one with the planter strip, and there will be street lighting as well. And then along the Montage Lane cul-de-sac, this will be a full public cul-de-sac with sidewalk connections to the existing sidewalks along Montage Lane. Streetlights will be placed along all frontages as well. The exact location is still will be submitted with the construction documents for the project. Any questions? All right, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy Killington.
That's okay.
You got it.
That's fine. Wendy Kellington, attorney for the applicant, P.O. Box 159, Lake Oswego. A couple of things were raised in the public testimony that I just want to reinforce the answer for you and be available for any questions. I think your staff did a fantastic job of answering these things. One of the concerns was
why is it that the applicant is not being required to put a public street through the site? And if you don't have the authority under the Dolan versus City of Tigard, Nolan versus California Coastal Commission, and your own code at 18.910.020 to demand that exaction, why don't you just call it a private street that the public can use and do it that way? And the answer is, as I think your staff said, and as the Planning Commission's decision says, that your code is really very clear, again, 18.910.020, that the only situations in which the city will require public street improvements or exactions associated with them is when they are, quote, directly related, end quote, and roughly proportional to the impacts of the development. And there was a detailed analysis done by your staff as well as by the applicant, and that standard simply cannot be met. And when that happens, your code says that if we can't demand a public improvement with a through street, then a cul-de-sac is what we will require, and that's why you have a cul-de-sac here. There was some concern about whether the facility units are a bunch of dwelling units as the city defines the term. Your staff is absolutely correct that the only definition that applies is the one in the city's code, because the city uses and creates a term of art called dwelling units. And in the city's code, it's very specific that a dwelling unit only happens if there's a quote unquote permanent provision for cooking, among other things. And in assisted living and memory care facilities, there is not and cannot be, according to the Oregon administrative rules that govern these things, the permanent provision of facilities for cooking. Why? They have to be removable. And all that will be provided here are removable microwaves. And the reason for that is a safety reason, and that is obvious. The fact remains that this is definitely the development of housing in the city, but it is not the development of dwelling units. Your staff is correct. It would make no sense to require these things to be considered dwelling units, because the parking requirements, as you saw, relate to per unit, when here only at max 5% of the residents in the assisted living might have cars. The numbers are far less. There are also provisions for dwelling units to have individual accesses with doors to open space areas, and that's a safety concern for these kinds of facilities. There's a whole lot of policy reasons why the plain text in your code that makes these provisions not dwelling units is a good idea. There were concerns about parking, and that has been studied ad nauseum. The parking here is well within the tolerances of the parking that is provided by this developer in other similar facilities. The evidence is undisputed that at max there will be no more than 51 staff on the facility at any one time. The evidence is fairly conclusive that there's more than adequate parking. One of the concerns is whether it might be overparked, but certainly not underparked. Finally, I want to leave with you this. What you heard from Sam right before I came to talk to you is that there will be a lot of improvements to the surrounding street system as a result of the proposal. The developer is really going to leave it better than they found it. There will be sidewalks where there were not sidewalks before. There will be landscaping where there was not landscaping before. There will be streetlights where there was not streetlights before. And there will be more safe, improved travel lanes where they were not before. This is a proposal that meets all of the terms of your code, as your professional staff and the Planning Commission have analyzed and decided. And we hope that you agree that the proposal meets relevant standards and will give it your approval. We thank you for your time. And if you have any questions of any member of our team, we're available to answer them. Thank you.
Mayor Snyder, you're still muted.
Thank you. Twice in one night. It's unusual for me. Does that conclude the testimony, the rebuttal testimony from the applicant?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are supposed to move to, at this time now, council questions of both staff or witnesses. This is not time for deliberation yet. I want to start with one for the city attorney to just get us going here. And that is going to be related to the requirements, and I take them very seriously. And I think some folks testifying tonight, were also sort of reminding us of this, but I already knew it, and I appreciate the reminder, but didn't need it. City Attorney Rahala, you indicated that we needed to take written testimony because of the virtual nature of this meeting up until the beginning of the meeting. That left us at 5:14 p.m. with 60 pages of documents that we hadn't seen before 5:14 this evening. And then further testimony that was forwarded at 6:08 p.m. I think, which we were already in an executive session for, I might add. So nobody could have reviewed that one. I guess I want to ask from a process standpoint, we have an obligation to review all of that testimony, which we could not have possibly have done before, given the timing of it, when it arrived. So can you indicate process-wise how you'd recommend we proceed, given that we can't even read all, or could not have possibly read all the testimony before the meeting?
Certainly. So council has a couple options. Yes, things are different in the virtual world, but essentially this would be the same as somebody handing in documents at a public hearing itself. And so in that case, there can't be an expectation that council will have read it prior to the hearing because there's just not time. So if the testimony was a summary of verbal testimony, that's a consideration for council. If the submitter testified before council, that's a consideration. Skimming it, if there are issues that you think need to be addressed further, that's a consideration. So council has the option of continuing deliberations until I think we currently have time held on the 24th. The plan was to come back with findings on the 24th after council reaches a tentative decision tonight. We can certainly continue the discussions until that time if council feels that it needs the additional time to read the late submittals. But like I said, there's several different considerations about the content, the speaker, provider, that all play into that answer. So I can't give you a cut and dried answer.
Okay, Councilor Newton.
Mr. Mayor, I have the same concern that you raised. Having worked for the city and been at public hearings where people submit testimony, mine's on my iPad and I can't even look at it while I'm trying to give people time and, listen. So I don't know if the testimony that I haven't read, I got through 17 pages of the 60 pages, is reflective of what people said. I'm not looking to see if they're reading it and it matches what they said. So I'm very concerned proceeding without reading it. It just makes me really nervous because, again, I only got to 17 of 60 pages and some more came in after. So it is a lot different in the virtual world because I don't have it in front of me to be able to sort of check to see if Mr. Rudy or somebody is just summarizing what they sent in. I don't even know if it's the same people. So I'm not really very comfortable proceeding without having reviewed all the testimony that came in.
All right, so I've got other questions that are just general. I guess I would suggest that we get our questions out. I would like to close the public hearing. So I'd like to finish our questions and hopefully get answers. Then we review the materials and between now and when we deliberate. But I don't think, given what Councilor Newton said and what I've said, I'm just concerned about deliberating before we read all those materials. So that's my thinking. City Attorney Rahala, can we ask our staff questions or witness questions tonight and close the public hearing and then read the materials and then deliberate on the 24th?
Yes, and if you did that and you had any further questions, you could reopen the public hearing or reopen the record, but not the public hearing.
Okay. Is the rest of the council comfortable with that approach? Do you have alternatives? No, okay. People like that approach by shaking of heads. I know it's not verbally on the record, but I got 3 head nods from other members of the council. Okay. Now it's on the record verbally. Let me just ask my quick questions of staff, and then we can go to other questions, and then we can probably close the public hearing and suspend the, we would basically suspend the action until the 24th of May. Is that correct, City Attorney Rahala?
Yes, so the plan was to reach a tentative decision tonight to allow staff time to come back with responsive findings.
That's
so
not gonna.
I know.
Oh, okay.
So the purpose of the purpose of the 2 parts between tonight and the 24th was to allow staff to address everything that is discussed tonight. All of that needs to be captured in the findings. And so we can, understanding that council won't have everything, won't have all the information before it to reach a decision, I might suggest that we, I'm thinking out loud here, I'm not sure that we can prepare responsive findings that capture everything for the 24th. We may have to do it in 3 pieces.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that would be our request. Because if we can't reach a tentative approval or a tentative decision tonight, we're going to need on our team time to make sure that the findings actually accurately capture everything the council decides, because then we need the findings to be inclusive of everything. So yeah, so I think that would be my recommendation, is to answer all the questions tonight, close the public hearing, keep the record open until next council meeting, and then I can check with the city manager as to whether we have time on the 17th to do that. Continue it until the 17th, reach a tentative decision on the 17th, and then come back on the 24th with a final adoption. So if that works, we'll do some work behind the scenes and get back to you if that works. But I think right now that's the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. My staff questions now, and Agnes, this will be either for you or other members of the staff. I'm just trying to, we have other facilities that were built recently that are similar to this, that are on Hall Boulevard, that are in the city, that are not creating the kinds of impacts that are being described by the community. So I guess I want to understand the relative size of the Bonaventure facility that's on Hall Boulevard and built in the last 5 years. How size-wise, how does that compare, and what would the impacts, the comparable impacts be? Because that site, I will say, as we had at the council meeting a couple weeks ago, that site generates a lot of 911 calls, a lot of medical calls for TVFNR. We saw that. That's kind of consistent. But beyond that, it's a relatively empty parking lot and not a ton of traffic in and out. So I don't know if you can answer that today, but I would just, there's also a memory care facility that was opened in the last few years on Hall Boulevard that's near just south of this area as well. I think that facility's smaller, but I'm not sure the memory care part of it is smaller. The whole overall size of the facility is probably smaller. So I just want to understand, particularly when we're trying to put the community concerns, at least hear them out, even though some of them may not directly apply to criteria, I still want to understand that. So that would be helpful. And I don't know if you can do that tonight, Agnes. What do you think?
I'll probably need to look it up just because I wasn't involved at all in the Bonaventure site. I know the one that you're referring to on Hall, Brookside. Yep. And yes, that one is quite a bit smaller than this facility. It's only 2 stories. And they're actually building a memory care wing just on the adjacent lot. But as far as scale, that's a little bit different. I would be happy to look into the Bonaventure and get you more information on that.
I think it'd be helpful context-wise for both the council and the community. My second question is really about trip generation, and this was kind of answered to some extent in the multifamily housing, 140 units versus this structure. But I think it kind of also, I think the annexation to Tigard is being questioned too. But what would be permitted on the 2 point whatever acres if it was just developed under Washington County standards? I mean, that's R25 or something. It would still be probably more units with more trip generation than even what's proposed. I guess I would like to understand that a little better too at some point, or maybe you can answer that now. I don't know.
So I believe the county zoning is R18 to R25, and I believe they basically apply that per acreage. Under our current zoning, we actually don't have a maximum density for this zone. The minimum density is 50 units per acre. So if they decided to do an apartment development here in Tigard, we would apply the 50 unit per acre minimum, and the site is approximately 2.5 acres. So it would result in quite a bit more units.
Yeah, my point was more about what I was trying to get at was more about even with the count, even if it was developed using the county zoning for multifamily, it would generate more trips, I suspect, just based on the testimony tonight than the other. And that's all I'm trying to understand.
Sure. And I think the traffic generation, and Jeremy, you can speak to that, is also different for a facility like this versus a standard apartment complex.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm gathering. I got that message loud and clear. I'm just trying to make a comparison to what might end up there if it wasn't this. And I actually think it might be more impactful was just where I was going, not to deliberate it, but just trying to get clarity. Okay, Youth Councilor Nog, you've got your hand up, and then Councilor Goodhouse.
I actually had a follow-up question to your question, Mayor Snyder. When it comes to the Bonaventure, is it the one on Hall and Sattler?
Yeah, it's right by your house, if that's what you're asking.
So I actually had a question to consider, I guess. There were a lot of community members that were against building the senior center in a neighborhood area. And I was living through a senior center being built in a community area. It would be interesting to survey people around the current Bonaventure that have gone through that to see how they were impacted during the building of it, to see if any of the construction or if there was any negative sides or any positives that should also be considered in the process when it was being built as well.
So that's probably something that would be good information for the city to have, and we may do outside of this process, but probably not directly related to the land use proceeding before us. But I think great questions and ones that the planning staff can listen to and hopefully act on. Councilor Goodhouse.
Thank you. To add to your request, Mayor, as far as other sites, there is also on McDonald, there's Woodland Heights Assisted Living. So Agnes, when you're looking at the different sizes and impacts on the community, that one's on McDonald, surrounded by homes as well. So if you wanted to add that to your list to see how the size and how that impacts the community and so forth.
Yes, I will do that. And there's actually one, a Steadfast, that's going in on Oak Street in Washington Square. So I'll add that one as well to the list.
All right, other council questions? Councilor Newton.
Yeah, I have a couple. Agnes, so, and remember, my old days as a planner are going to show, so you can laugh and tell me the laws have changed. But used to be when we annexed property, we would apply the closest zone. So in this case, we're going from 18 to 24 units to MUR1, which is basically double the density. In this case, are we assigning the zone, the MUR1, because that's what the Washington Square zone is? Okay, so essentially it isn't working like it used to, where you would do the closest compatible zone. Is that what you're saying?
So Washington Square is a little bit different because when they adopted the implementation plan in the 90s, they actually adopted proposed zoning for that area. And so under the county zoning, it's almost like they pre-zoned the area.
Okay, so, but it's still essentially doubling the number of, you said it would be like 50. Okay, so it's more intense to be in this, to have the property develop in the city. That's going to be more dense.
Yes.
Right,
yes.
Okay. The second question I have relates to looking at the development as an apartment versus a congregate care. So I don't think that traffic is going to be, I think there's probably going to be more traffic if it's a real apartment, private units, than congregate care. But I'm thinking about other impacts. Apartment dwellings for the most part don't have employees coming and going. They don't have deliveries for a kitchen facility. When you live in your own apartment, you're buying groceries, so you're not doing that. The traffic patterns are different, and there's likely more emergency vehicles, as we saw from the TVFNR situation. So, it confused me a little reading the staff report because there was this, the apartment doesn't really apply. And I think that's true because through the design standards, I don't know that makes that much of a difference. But when you're talking about impacts, I think it might. And so I'm a little bit concerned about addressing those potential impacts because I think they are different than in an apartment dwelling. And the idea of talking about senior housing versus assisted living. Assisted living is more of a congregate care facility, so I think we have to be mindful of those impacts. I'm a little bit concerned about how the impacts kind of slide over in this case. I know I talked to people around the Bonaventure development who live behind it quite a bit when I was on staff, but this property isn't technically the front of the building. They're using kind of a private road going potentially through neighborhood streets that are narrower. For the most part, Bonaventure accesses right off of Hall Boulevard. So I think the impacts on the neighborhood are a little bit different, and we need to be more mindful. I'm concerned about the screening of that area right by the Brownstone development for deliveries. You're going to be getting food trucks and all that kind of stuff there. And maybe I'm trying to look really closely at what's required, but I do think there's going to be some pretty severe impacts on those adjacent properties for those deliveries. So that would concern me. I raised a question too about that queuing for the loading and unloading off 92nd. I have a lot of experience visiting assisted living. I have older parents over time. And on Sunday afternoon, you can get easily a dozen cars queued up. People in wheelchairs and walkers don't get out, very quickly. So I'm a little worried that queuing might not be adequate. There was testimony that there was going to be changes to parking in the neighborhood. That confuses me a little because it looks like there's going to be some street improvements. Are they going to lose parking on the streets? That was raised a couple of times in the public testimony.
Jeremy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I think the reference was in terms of Southwest 92nd Avenue for the parking situation. So they are providing the full half-street improvements along their frontage. I'm not sure, I think they were probably referencing that there is the loading and unloading area that will be going in there. So if individuals are currently parking kind of where that loading and unloading area will go, obviously there wouldn't be, you know, a parking spot on the street in that specific location. So I think that's what the comment was referencing, but.
Okay. And then my last question relates to the public street. And, you know, I got to live through Dolan. I got to talk to all the New York Times and everything when we were going through Dolan. So I'm very aware of how that works. But at one point, the city, because there's that barricade there, the intent was for Montage to go up through and connect at Hall, I'm assuming opposite 91st. So I understand the argument about proportionality, but was there ever an idea or a need in mind that there needed to be some extension of a public street for circulation in that area? And if that has changed, I feel like we should address that, because at one point there's a barricade clearly indicating the street was going to go through, a public street was going to go through. I'm curious if there was any kind of development on that property that would have warranted a public street connecting to Hall, or it never would have met the proportionality. And if for some reason that just is never going to be able to be required, I think we need to speak to that, because it was seemed really clear to me that the intent was a public street go through there. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you, Councilor Newton. Councilor Shaw.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And I had very similar questions to Councilor Newton, except for the Montage street going through. However, I did have a question with regards to visitor parking, and I'm unclear. I think I heard that may not be necessary because there'll be very few visitors. And perhaps that's something we can look at as well with Bonaventure, because I too have experienced Saturday and Sunday queuing, even certain days that there's trips to certain places like Washington Square. And so I want to know if there indeed is going to be some visitor parking included. Thank you.
Agnes, is that, or Jeremy, is that something you guys will respond to during our next session? You don't have any response now?
Sure, I can look into it and get back to you regarding that, as well as it relates to the other facilities.
Okay. I'll just point out that Bonaventure at least does have connections to the neighborhood back out the back entries to the property. I don't know if everybody knows that. Someone was referencing how that the neighborhood behind may not be impacted, but I don't see them used very often, but they are there. Councilor Goodhouse?
Yeah, thank you. Just for a point of reference, I was just curious, from Planning Commission, were a lot of these questions also raised in Planning Commission, or are these all new questions from what were brought up or asked during that time? From recollection, if you know, Agnes.
From the public or from Planning Commission?
From the public.
They were very similar. I mean, there's been so much public comment on this proposal that a lot of the things that were stated today have been brought up before and before City Council or Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions? And then we'll, if not, City Attorney Rahala, do you and the city manager now have a plan on the timing?
Yes, Council, I think we have one. So the applicant would like to keep the 24th decision date. And so I think we can accommodate that. That was the city's original plan as well. So we'd like to keep that date. So our proposal would be to come back on next week on the 17th, have the conclusion of the any questions of staff and enter into deliberations, reach a tentative decision on the 17th, direct staff to come back with responsive findings on the 24th, and council would adopt the final ordinance on the 24th, assuming that's the direction they give.
And how much time would we have on the 17th to do all that?
I think we can squeeze in about a half an hour. We're looking at potentially moving an executive session to the beginning of the meeting like we did today.
Okay. Would that give us more time then?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't think 30 minutes is going to do it. Councillor Newton?
Yeah, really quick, will we get responses ahead of time, or are we going to be getting all the answers to all our questions at the meeting? That would concern me, trying to deliberate then after that. Will we get, I'm not sure that's going to be enough time if staff has to prepare responses. It's Tuesday and you know, so that concerns me.
I would like to try to the responses regarding the other facilities and some of the questions raised here with the AIS for the next meeting.
Okay. When would that come out then? Because normally that'd already be out and due, right? So when will it come out approximately?
Shelby, I'm not really familiar with the AIS timelines. Steve, looks like Steve popped on.
I can jump in. If we're still on the 17th, the meeting of the 17th, correct? Follow up.
Yes.
So, right, we posted the agenda today, so we would have to revise the agenda. What we'd probably do is start with putting the item on with some very basic information, I'll call it for now, and then follow back up once Agnes and others have time to answer that and provide that as supplemental information to you, trying to reach a goal that Councilor Newton asked the question. So that'd be our plan. We want to get the revised agenda out. It would not have the follow-up information attached because that would happen tomorrow. And then we would follow up soon thereafter once the team has a chance to provide it.
I would say I don't know about other members of the council, but I would say midday Monday would be the latest that would be acceptable to be useful. Councilor Newton, to meet the not right before the meeting standard. I don't know what your thinking is. Or would you like it?
No, I just think we need to have, time to look at it ahead of time and be able to, otherwise we're sort of reacting on the fly. So I think we would have a more productive discussion and deliberation if we could have it ahead of time. But if I know it's coming Monday afternoon, I'll block out Monday afternoon to read.
Okay, so midday Monday works for you? Okay.
That's fine.
City Manager Reimer, does that work, you think, for the staff?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up. Agnes, what's your initial thought on that since you're helping lead this, you and Jeremy?
So I think the two things that I have on my list that I heard that were questions was looking at similar facilities as far as scale and scope and size in comparison to this one. And then the other question was related to the visitor parking and looking at what also Bonaventure did related to this proposal.
Yeah, and it's the size and impact and the trip generation implications, et cetera, is what, and community impact. Councilor.
I raised the issue about, we're not going to have a street connecting. And I think it just was pretty obvious to me that was left out of the staff report. We talked about the proportionality, and I understand that, but we have had for years the intent that street go through. So I think we need to speak to that.
Perfect. I can add that to it.
Agnes, I could speak to that tonight if we have time, or
I'd be happy to speak to that tonight as well. Sorry, this is Assistant Community Development Director McGuire.
Hi, Tom.
Sure, Tom, you could lead it off and then I could piggyback off of you. No problem.
I believe it was addressed in the staff report because, yes, Councilor Newton, it is a requirement. And we talked to the applicant. We met with him many times to go over that requirement. and looked at a few plans that they had that we did not think were sufficient. And then they brought up the issue of rough proportionality, and they didn't see that what they were proposing met the rough proportionality test to require that full street connection. And they provided us with an extensive response with a lot of information that confirmed for us that it did indeed not meet the rough proportionality test. So at that point, we determined that we were not going to be able to ask for the full street connection. And that's when we went to the alternate, which is we need the cul-de-sac bulb, because that's required by the code. And then the minimum of the 8-foot multi-use path connection. But you're correct. In a location like that, we would normally ask for that. And I would say where this is subdivision, we probably could have gotten that connection.
Right. And so I just, again, all I was looking for was something about how that impacts circulation there. That's what I was thinking about, because we had it required for a reason, and I think it was for circulation. That's no longer going to be an option because my understanding is it's a private street now. It's a private drive, so people can't use it. So it just seemed odd to me not to address that somehow. I'm going to let it go, but that just seems odd to me, not to address the fact that you know, I understand what you're saying, Assistant Director McGuire, and I appreciated the thoroughness of that, but I still felt like we just dropped the idea that that was needed for circulation and how that's going to impact that area with regard to circulation.
Okay, I understand the aspect of your question a little bit more. I wouldn't say exactly we just dropped it. I mean, the reason we want the connection is because of our basic principle of Tigard is connectivity. We want to get connectivity in places, as many places as we can get it. And we try to do that through development. There are times when we're not able to do that through development. Jeremy can speak to issues of, if we don't have that connection, what does that do to the system? I think that's what you're asking, really.
Correct. Thank you.
And so whether Jeremy wants to respond to that right now tonight, or if he wants to put that in our follow-up, I would leave that up to him. But
sure, Tom, I could speak to that tonight. So when the Montage townhomes, the adjacent townhome development was developed, this was under Washington County Code, and they did submit a shadow plat regarding the Montage Lane extension. The shadow plat, although not a binding document, is meant to show that the extension would not be precluding development on the adjacent lots. And so providing that stub with the assumption that there would be a townhome or subdivision development on the adjacent lots provided that ability to subdivide and develop that land, provided with that full street connection. What we have before us is a very different development than what was envisioned, a couple decades ago when the townhomes went in. And so what the applicant is proposing is a single multi-use development. And so the terminus of the cul-de-sac bulb provides that public turnaround and the clear delineation between the extents of the public right-of-way and where the private property begins. So that meets our code standards in terms of terminating a street. I'd also, we have Southwest 91st that's to the north of Hall Boulevard. We also have a Southwest 91st to the south, and that street connection was precluded by the existing development. So you could see that the Southwest 91st that's off of Southwest Borders also terminates in the cul-de-sac here. So there is actually no full street connection between the north side of Southwest Hall Boulevard, that Southwest 91st there, compared to the south. So that connection is already precluded there. So in terms of the connectivity piece, I think Tom is correct. We didn't drop the issue. So our code, if that full street connection is precluded, in this case by the rough proportionality test, we are having the multi-use path, so an 8-foot wide multi-use path for ped and bike connection. So that will be provided through the site. We have a similar case with the Bonaventure development there. If you look at the site plan for Bonaventure, they have 2 driveways, so one access off of Hall Boulevard and then one off of Southwest, I think it's 83rd there, basically on the backside. And they have a similar internal network in terms of the drive aisles to provide that connectivity for the users. But there's also on the north side of that property, there is a multi-use path for that public connectivity. So it's a similar case to what is being proposed here. So hopefully that helps to answer your question.
Just to bring these questions like all the way around that Councillor Newton was raising, when you say the connection might have been made if it were a subdivision, is that mostly would have been allowed because the trip generation of a subdivision would have changed the rough proportionality analysis, and what's proposed generates so few trips that you can't argue the rough proportionality? Is that am I dense or am I getting, is that the deal?
I would not call you dense, Mr. Mayor. That is certainly part of it. But there is also, so when you have a subdivision, right, all of your individual lots need to have frontage on a public street. So that is also part of the driving factor. So if you have a subdivision proposed there, that's why you have the stub for Montage, right? So you're not precluding.
So you would have had to have the street, a street anyway.
If you were proposing a subdivision, the difference here with this development, it's not a subdivision, right? You're going to have a single lot and a single facility on that single lot. So
yep, I get it. Okay, just trying to make sure we're making all the connections and making things make sense. Okay. Yep. Other questions that need to be raised, or otherwise, I think the plan here is to continue this to the 17th for answering of questions and deliberation. And before we do anything else, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. And do we need a motion to do that, to continue it to the 17th and the 24th?
Yes, please. Just to continue it until the 17th.
To the 17th. All right. Someone want to make that motion? I got all night.
I make a motion to move the meeting to carry the meeting over to the May 17th, 2022.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Attorney Rahala, is that clear enough? We didn't use the word continue, but is it close enough? The intent?
Yes, yes. The intent is that the public is now closed and will continue the case until the 17th.
All right. City Recorder Krager, a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councillor Newton.
Yes.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right. We are continued to the 17th of May. Thank you to the applicant. Thank you to the community. Thank you to staff. Very thorough and complex discussion tonight, and testimony. Thank you. Let's move on to non-agenda items. I don't think we have any. Administrative report, City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and councilors. Just a couple of brief updates from our library team to keep you informed of the progress we're making of coming out of the pandemic. The team reports that we answered at least 3,100 questions at our reference desk in April. This is about 70% of where we were in April of 2019. So you can continue to see more and more use of our library in different ways. A couple other things, we're going to have a student debt workshop coming up on May 12th, which is this Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30, where the presenter will teach strategies on to support participants' financial futures, as well as dealing with their student loans. This is made possible by the Friends of the Tigard Library, so thanks to the Friends group for funding this for us. And then the Story Walk on Faneuil Creek is back, and so this is part of our Move for May program. And right now it's going to be, the book will be We All Play by Julie Flett. And so it's a chance once again for our community to get back out on the trails and enjoy some of the fun things that we've done in the past and support the Move for May initiative that we have as well. And thanks to those of you on this that have already participated in that this month and helping our families with a safe walk to school this past week. That's my brief report, and we will continue working on next week's agenda as we talked about, and provide a revised agenda in the next couple days for you in the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you, City Manager Reimer. I'm realizing if we're going to start at 6 p.m., we actually need to poll everybody this week and figure out if we actually can do that. I'm not sure I can. I don't have my calendar in front of me, so better check
We'll
that
send
out.
something out immediately in the morning and see how we see how that looks.
All right, we do not have any executive session left. Is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll move to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Counselor Goodhouse,
Yes.
Counselor Newton,
Yes.
Council President Lube,
Yes.
Counselor Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes. All right, we are adjourned. Good night, Tigard.